KitcoMining special coverage of PDAC is brought to you by Gold Mining, Uranium Energy Corps, and Uranium Royalty Corps.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeremy Saffron. Welcome back to Kitco News coverage here at the 2025 PDAC conference in Toronto. There is a lot of excitement in the room, investors looking for their next deal as well as some experts. And of course, we've been hearing a lot about uranium, nuclear energy, the market, the AI power, and everything to it. Of course, today we welcome Scott Melbye. He's the CEO of Uranium Royalty Corp, also the EVP of Uranium Energy Corp. Good to see you, Scott.
Jeremy, it's always a pleasure.
We have a lot to talk about this interview. Of course, we have Trump's energy dominance policy that we're seeing take, basically into effect now. We're seeing different executive orders take place in the White House. We were discussing off camera. Some days it moves rapidly, so we're going to try and keep up. I first want to talk about the space. I mean, it's been an interesting couple of years for uranium. As we know, it's cyclical, but it seems to be on an uptrend.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I look at this from the perspective of a 41-year veteran. I've seen all the ups and downs and everything in between, but the last 3-4 years and currently where we are today, I've never seen a better narrative around nuclear power behind uranium, whether it's just the supply and demand fundamentals or geopolitics, the green energy transition, and now just the need for more energy. The U.S. has baseload demand growth for electricity again, and data centers, as you mentioned, are making that an even greater challenge. So it's definitely a time where we're going to need a lot more nuclear energy, and it's going to call for a lot more uranium.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Open it up, because as I was telling you before, somebody told me when it comes to the uranium and nuclear industry, it's just about time and about trust. And it seems like the general public is starting to destigmatize. They understand that we are in an energy crisis. We need more of it. Go back to the supply and demand issues that we're seeing, particularly in the U.S. right now. Is still less supply than we needed?
Yeah, so I mean, your first point about public opinion changing, I think that really happened with the green energy transition. And, the carbon-free aspect of nuclear power doesn't go away. We have the beautiful position of being in the United States loved by Democrats and Republicans. They get to nuclear for different reasons, but that's been the support for bipartisan legislation and just the general support for nuclear in the mix. In the supply and demand, we now have we've gone from a flat market where nuclear energy wasn't growing or even declining after Fukushima to a point now where nuclear energy is looking to double by 2040, and we have aspirational goals to triple nuclear power by 2050 at COP28, 29. We've had over 30 countries and 160 companies sign on to that pledge. So we're now in the unique position where we're building nuclear power plants and we're proposing new nuclear power plants faster than we're bringing on new uranium supply. And that's because we went through a very long, prolonged bear market, and there was not enough investment in exploration or mine development. Now, we need new mines tomorrow. And the easier mines, if there is such a thing in mining, are the restart of operations. So UEC's mines in the United States have a leg up because we were already permitted, licensed, and largely constructed. You've seen a couple other mines in Australia and in Africa, but we probably need 5 or 6 more between now and 2030, and that's where the supply crunch really hits. Right. Is it's not quick or easy to build a mine anywhere in the world.
And talk to me a little bit about the macro situation, because on the back of that, we also have the uranium export ban coming from Russia, and I know that is a lot of the supply coming into the U.S. Talk to us about what that means and what we're going to do about it.
Yeah, so one of our signature successes at the Uranium Producers of America last year was working with bipartisan members of Congress to pass the Russian uranium ban. And a companion to that was the Nuclear Fuel Security Act, which put about $3 billion into the revitalization of uranium conversion enrichment in the United States. The ban was very important because we've really we've had that sort of state-owned enterprise impact. 25% of our enrichment, 50% of our uranium today has come from Russia, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan, and that's inhibited additional mines in places like Canada and the United States. And with that ban in place, which comes in fully by the end of 2027, we now know that we can build mines in the U.S. and we won't be undercut by Russian or Kazakhs going forward. There was some discussion that, with the events in Ukraine, and if President Trump can bring peace to Ukraine. Will sanctions go away on Russia? And some sanctions may go away on Russia, but one thing that won't be undone is the ban. It's a legislative fix. So it was one of the reasons we didn't leave it up to an executive order that could be changed by a Republican or Democratic president. Legislation would have to be changed, and it was passed unanimously by both houses of Congress. So it's as much a revitalization tool for the U.S. industry as it is punishment of Russia. So I would see it not being impacted by peace coming to Ukraine if that should ever happen.
Yeah, if it should happen, of course, we continue to watch for it with what's happening in Washington now and the discussions. If that ends up, I mean, is the U.S. front-running this? I mean, they seem to be getting ahead of it more than other countries here. Is it easier to permit? Is it easier to get going?
Well, we went from a very low point. Zero.
Yeah.
U.S. uranium led the global production in 1980. Then the Canadians emerged, and then the Kazakhs emerged as the world's largest producer. But we have a generation of mines, whether they're the higher grade conventional deposits of the Colorado Plateau or the ISR mines like we're developing in Texas and Wyoming. They have very low capital cost and low operating cost. That allows us, we're not as big as, say, the big Canadian mines in Saskatchewan, but on a cost basis, we're competitive. And so I'm very optimistic. Not only is UEC moving ahead, and we drummed yellowcake in Wyoming at the Christensen Ranch Irrigary operations last week, but we have other U.S. producers coming on as well. So I'm as a head of an industry organization, I'm very happy where the industry is headed. At UEC, it's been an incredible time of growth.
Yeah, you mentioned, Scott, that 45 years of experience in this industry. Has there ever been a time, as we know it's cyclical, we go through these runs where uranium seems to be the flavor of the week, Fukushima, something terrible happens, and then, the public kind of flips. Is this the setup for the perfect storm here in the uranium sector?
I think it is, because we were very encouraged by the green energy transition and the impact that had on nuclear, but now the world, and particularly the developed world, needs new sources of electricity. All the electrical growth in global markets around the world was in the developing, India, China, and the U.S., Europe was stagnant or flat. But if we have to build, take for example, the state of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia, 20% of the electricity they're producing today goes to data centers. In 2 years, it goes to 40%. Magnify that around the country and around the developed world. These data centers use 10 times the computing power of the current average Google search. And if the U.S. is going to stay ahead of China and other countries, they're going to need to build out the power systems that will support that. For the United States and in a Trump administration, that means natural gas and nuclear. And thank God we have an administration that believes in more energy, not less, because if we didn't have that, we would fall behind in AI, and frankly, the U.S. would be subject to blackouts. And still, as it is, the nuclear energy industry needs to fire on all cylinders. On the oil and gas side, we need to drill and build pipelines. We need both of these components to bring us energy dominance and security.
When President Trump came to office, one of the commitments that he made was if you spend $1 billion, we're going to fast track, we're going to get, drill, baby, drill, that kind of energy first policy. We've seen some remnants of that going forward now. How significant is this policy change for the U.S. in terms of energy, and where do you anticipate it going?
Yeah, one of the first things that President Trump did upon being elected was announce the establishment of the Energy Dominance Council in the White House. It's a council that is comprised of the heads of all the major departments and agencies. It's led by Secretary Burgum in Interior, Secretary Wright in Department of Energy, and it's meant to just identify if there are any bottlenecks or obstacles, whether it's on the oil and gas side or on the nuclear or uranium, and just fix them. Like, you have a concerted whole of government effort to deliver more energy. I think Trump actually declared it a national energy crisis or emergency, and that's the way you need to look at it. So we can't take, in small modular reactors, which some of the folks in the Trump sphere, like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and others, these are people that have put rockets into space and landed the rocket back on the pad. They look at a small modular reactor and go, well, that's really cool science, but that's not that complicated. It should be licensed in 2 years, not 8. And I think if you have this whole new, and I think having the tech industry, whether it's Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, needing this energy and bringing these great minds to energy in the United States, we're going to have breakthroughs that we haven't seen in past decades.
Yeah, you brought up AI for a moment there, and I want to transition over because we saw the news of DeepSeek. There was a little bit of, some volatility in the market when it came to NVIDIA.
AI was over. The AI dreams were over.
It's over. We don't need enough power. Just more smoke than fire here, or was it just another creative way of buying a tip?
I think it was Chinese propaganda, but it sure worked because it sure knocked the share prices back of our largest tech companies. But listen, even if chips become more efficient, we'll just use more of them to generate more AI data. So we see the hyperscalers not changing their view of needing energy, and we're hearing huge hundreds of billion-dollar data centers being proposed around the U.S. I think those that kind of employ a combination of gas and nuclear will have the greatest success because the gas may be dispatchable more quickly, and the SMRs, even the advanced ones, the first of a kind are being built by 2028, 29, 30. But 2030 on is when we would expect to have greater scale of those starting up and moving forward.
The SMR space is fascinating. It seems as though it's just getting started, but is the potential here then having some SMRs close to the data centers, what have you, some reservations, there's a lot of different places and cases where you can put them, and relying less on the large, huge operations?
Yeah, so you're seeing that already. For the hyperscalers, the low-hanging fruit is to try to capture nuclear-powered electricity from existing plants. So Amazon with the Talon Energy unit in Pennsylvania, basically going behind the grid to capture that energy before behind the meter before it hits the grid. Microsoft restarting a shuttered reactor. That's kind of the next level of complexity. But then, there's only so many of these restarts. There's another one being proposed for Iowa. You then have to look to build new. And the SMRs are certainly aligning with these tech companies and receiving funding and joint development activities. But you also get to a point where I think in the United States, don't be shocked over the course of 2025, we have announcements of new large-scale reactors. Because think of it, if you're Dominion Generation in Virginia, you don't need 100, 200 megawatts a time. You need 1,500, 3,000, 5,000 megawatts. Yeah. You may need to go with large reactors.
Now, the uranium prices are certainly coming back. They weren't what they once were, as you know, but the supply chain seems to be an issue. What does that mean for the 10% tariffs coming to energy from Canada?
Yeah, there's been a lot of executives from Canada down in the United States and making their case to the Trump administration. Our industry organization didn't take a side in that. We believe that the tariff situation is really being negotiated at the highest level, at President Trump's level. So we've kind of stayed out of it, neither for or against them. But we're already seeing a premium developed for uranium bought and sold in the United States of about $2 to $3 a pound on a $64 a pound product. So if the tariff goes through, I would expect that prices will be higher in the U.S. market for U.S. pounds that are either mined in the U.S. or already located in the U.S., don't have to cross a border.
You talked about that thing from the beginning. We talk about time and trust when it comes to the industry. You were just referring to 2027, 2028 for some of these reactors to come online. When will this not be an issue for the U.S.?
Well, I mean, we haven't been building baseload generation capacity on our electric grid for some time. But I think as we build units and we gain experience, even the Vogtle experience with Westinghouse was painful, but there was a lot of lessons learned, and hopefully the next two units, don't repeat some of those mistakes. So I think we'll gain muscle memory and a capability, and especially in small modular and advanced. I think the U.S. has a real advantage there. Our Navy, our nuclear Navy, has probably over 104 reactors and 84 submarines and aircraft carriers. We know what small modular reactors can be like in that setting. Building them on land in the various settings, whether it's data centers, desalination of water, heat, process heat, electricity for mining or petrochemical. The uses are just too many to talk about. I mean, I think in the next generation, SMRs will revolutionize the way electricity is generated and delivered. And now we just have to deliver on the first-of-a-kind units, and they're getting strong government support in the UK, Canada, the United States. They have to be built on budget, on time, but if they are, look for that sector to grow just exponentially in 2030 on.
Okay, so we're not going to be in a position in a few years where we went, oh no, we've registered everything, we've opened it all up, and now we have too much.
Well, no, I mean, we'd love to be in that position. We're playing catch-up suddenly after a long period of flat, low demand.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Scott Melbye, of course, the CEO of Uranium Royalty Corp, joining us here at PDAC 2025. It's our 15th year covering this wonderful conference in Toronto. Don't forget to hit our subscribe button and stay tuned. We'll see you next time.
KitcoMining special coverage of PDAC is brought to you by Gold Mining, Uranium Energy Corp, and Uranium Royalty Corp.